Hello, it's the Dawn Jarvis show and welcome to the show. Today I am with Jasmine Mbye and we're going to be talking about why it's time to stop hiding. Hi Jasmine, how are
Hi.
you today? It's really good to
Hi.
see you.
Yeah, I'm feeling really good today. Thank you. And it's lovely to see you, John.
Oh, so good to see you. And today we're going to talk about why it's time to stop hiding. And Jasmine
Mm.
is a TEDx speaker and she's featured in the Sun's fabulous magazine and Luton Today, and is a regular contributor to radio and a public speaker. She did the first inspiring talks, retreats, conferences, and events. And we're going to be talking about how it's your God-given right to authentically show up. It's imperative to own your own story because it's yours and no one else's, and that you have the power in your life to speak your truth and shine. Jasmine,
Mm.
this is amazing. I want to hear a
Mm.
little bit about you and how you came to be. Tell me your story.
Wow, a story. Okay. So my story starts with me, I'm the only child for my mum, the eldest of four girls for my dad, Caribbean background. And so, there are certain things that are normal, like, growing up, it's not uncommon, for do you want me to give you something to cry for? And these kind of things, that we used to experience
Yes.
as a way of keeping us in line. And to be honest, I'm not anti-smacking. However, my experience went beyond that. My mum, I didn't recognize it at the time, but my mum used to suffer with her mental health. She had a very challenging childhood herself once she came to the UK from the Caribbean, and that really affected her. And even as a young child, I knew that, and so I would kind of seek to want to understand my mum and try and kind of be there for her. So from a young age, I felt that need to be there for her. Because I knew that she was struggling with, just her mental health in terms of well-being, depression, that kind of stuff. But what that unfortunately meant for me was I got it, whatever that it was, I got it. And so that resulted in kind of me growing up in an environment where I began to feel just, I don't know what I'm going to do that's going to get me slapped, that's going to get me backhanded. And so I was constantly walking on eggshells, afraid. Like, some of the most horrible things that have happened to me have been as a result, of the relationship with my mum. So the only person that sucker punched me to the stomach is my mum, and so that really kind of formed me wearing this mask, because I'd go to school and it was like my chance to just be a child and be free, and so no one could tell, unless they were skilled probably, that I was any different from any other child. I was chatty, I was feisty, I was just seemingly a regular child. But as I got older, when I came home was a place that felt very oppressive. And I remember friends would ring me on the phone, they'd be like, Jazz, are you okay? Because I talked different when I was in the house. And so I just learned to wear this mask of I'm confident, I'm fine, I'm okay. But underneath that, I hated myself, literally hated myself. So I would avoid looking in the mirror. And it's as if things couldn't get any worse. When I hit teen years, I got mild acne. You're just like, God, what are you doing to me? Like, seriously? So then as time went by, the mask became, makeup. I needed to cover my face because I had these spots that would kind of come back in their cycles, and just made an outward reflection of how I felt inwardly. That kind of, I had a reason now to really hate myself, even more so than before. And so that was the early part of my life. I went to uni, I kind of studied, I've, got not great grades, but I've got grades and stuff and thing. But it was always with this kind of pretense, this I'm okay, but underneath that, just desperately wanting to be loved, but being afraid of love because it had hurt me so much. Wanting, relationships, but actually being really scared to get in them. And then, thinking I finally met the person to spend my life with, that's it, someone who's really loving. And then to find out that actually you're quite like my mum. Oh my God, that same volatility, that same anger. The abuse was never physical, in terms of hands were not put on me, but the intimidation, the me then walking around on eggshells, it just all began to play out again in my adult life. And I'd started this business, the Like Me CIC, but even in my business, I was still wearing a mask. And my strapline, I actually laugh now, it was showing up as you want to be seen. That was what kind of like I was espousing in the business, because it was all about, what do I want to project? And, you know, we hear the fake it till you make it, which I was wholeheartedly, you know, grabbing onto. And it's literally only been in the last year that I've realized the intention in that, although it's good, it's not really what we're wanting. And it's a lady called Catherine Cuddy. I'd have to double check her name. She says, what we really want to do is fake it until we become it. And I'm like, that's it. That's what we really mean. We want to fake it till we become it. You're faking that confidence until you become confident, you know, but that's just more about the power of our words, you know, and just, we've got to step out. And so now I've got to that place. I think once you hit rock bottom, it's like the mask, it comes off. And I just thought, you know what, I'm done with the masks now. My life's fallen apart. I've hit places that in my nightmares, I don't think I ever imagined that I'd go to. So let me just embrace it. And here I am.
Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that story. I think a lot of people, and you know, we share a background from the Caribbean, and quite authoritarian parents, you know, that weren't, you know, that is part of our, you know, our upbringing. You know, people joke about it, and that is part of our, but of what we know as to be true. And you know, as a nurse, you know, and you have education and you behave in a certain way. So there's a couple of things that you said around being one person at home and then another person when you're at school, that, you know, people wouldn't have known that you sort of like you actually spoke differently. And I've spoken about having a sort of like Jamaican childhood, you know, in the East Midlands, but at school I was English, and that there's a difference. And people talk about I can't remember the exact, it's like switching. That's the expression, that you switch, that you're a different person at home and a different person at work, and people won't know what that is. But the actual emotional toll that takes on you is very interesting, isn't it? And the impact on relationships that it has, and what to you is normal. So a normal parenting style is a quite authoritarian one, and so then you sort of like seek that normality in your other relationships as well, which definitely has an impact in your behavior, what you think is normal, you know, and but also in the unhappiness and the impact it can create as well. So and you know, I know a little bit about your story, but what impact did it have on you? And you know, you've talked about your childhood, you've talked about, but you know, so, and you've talked about having a business and, you know, sort of doing that, but sort of in the last year things have changed for you. What's that look like?
What that looks like is, when I started my business, I remember being interviewed, a lovely lady in the Luton area. Events are called Simply D's, and she was on a radio show, Pantango Radio, so she invited me on, and I remember her wanting to ask me about my childhood story, because I was like, you know, yeah, childhood was tough, and she's like, what does that mean? Kind of the question you just asked me. And I wouldn't really go there. I wouldn't really share what that meant. And I was just interviewed, I think it was last week maybe, on my friend's show, Sharing Your Story is her campaign. And I was saying that, you know, I've come to understand we can't really own our story if we're scared to share it. You know, how can you say you own something? It's like owning a car and you're scared to drive it. Like, who has a car and they're scared to drive it? If you own your story, it's yours to tell. But I was scared to share my story, but I understand now why. When you have a story that sheds people that you love in a light that's unfavorable, it can be very hard to share, because I'm not trying to say my mum's a bad woman, because she's not a bad woman. She has made some mistakes, in raising me that did damage me emotionally, profusely, more than she's even fully acknowledged, and I think can acknowledge, for the most part. And she got back together. So some of the things that he's done, again, someone that I have loved and has hurt me profusely to put I left, and we rekindled. And so for me, what that looks like is me just feeling that I have to, and it's this, I have to do this. I can't really share. I can't tell you that, the threats, like I said, the only person that sucker punched me is my mum. I wouldn't even kind of mention those things. The most painful things that have ever been said to me have come from my mum's mouth, and I think I shared it with my interview with my friend to say, one of the reasons why I had such an issue with self-loathing is because my mum told me straight up that, I'm so ugly, she's embarrassed to walk down the street with me. That's soul destroying. And so when you experience these things, but you also feel unable to just exhale them, but they've affected you so deeply, you're trapped, and you are, in this place of hiding, of trying to be, because you want to be okay, you want to feel whole and normal and free, but the fact that you won't speak your truth, that you won't own your story, you are incapable of doing so. And so when things shifted for me, I ended up in a refuge with my daughter. I didn't even know what a refuge really was. I'd heard of them, but, didn't really know. To be in a room where I don't have my own stuff, you share the same background, this is not the way that you live. Your home, you keep your house clean, you have your own bathroom. You know what I mean? These are things that I'm accustomed to. Thank God. God knew I couldn't share a bathroom with anybody, so he worked out that I had my own bathroom. But to share a kitchen with people who don't share the same standards as me, it's tough. To be at such a place. I'm a woman with a degree. I'd started my own business, and here I am in a refuge. It's just like it to me, it's almost laughable, but it's not laughable at the same time. And then what changed was I just realized it was just time for me to just speak my truth, because I realized in doing so, I set myself free, but also I help set others free, because they think to themselves, good God, she's been there, she's been through that, and here she is to tell the tale. And so for me, that was the difference, that actually realizing in sharing my story, I set myself free, but more than just me, I help others get free too.
Yeah, that was a really powerful story, really, really powerful story. And a few things that you said here around, so you talk about showing up authentically, and that means totally different things to different people.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing from you is that you can't show up authentically unless you acknowledge the background, you acknowledge the context, you acknowledge why people behave like they do. And there's a little bit of from my health background, in that there's expectations about how mothers are, and there's expectations about smacking, about whether that's right or wrong, or what people who do that are like. There are, when you said that your mother said that she was ashamed to walk down the street with I took an intake of breath, but I hear you, because my mother said the same thing to me,
Wow.
but from, sort of like living this sort of like bicultural life, sort of like hearing that from a sort of European perspective, it's sort of like, oh God, that's awful. But that's our truth. Our parents would say things like that to us, and that would be completely normal. And coming from a place where of their own damage, not, and for whatever reason that is, that they would say that kind of thing. And for listeners, that the context of saying that, it doesn't mean I don't love you. It means that that's what came into someone's head, and they said it, and there's sort of lots behind it. There's lots of context behind that. And so to own your own story, which you're very passionate about, you have to be authentic. So those two things are really, really powerful. But you also say that, you know, if you have the power to speak your truth, that's something that's going to set you free, you know, that you can shine. But to have that, you have to own it, know what it's about, and then be able to speak about it, articulate, and not apologize for it. Say, no, there's reasons why this happened. Doesn't mean that my mum didn't love me. It means it is what it is. And I went to a place and realized all of that, and I've come back, and I've got relationships with my husband and with my mother, and I can make it work. So I think it's really, really, really powerful, because there are, in my professional, I did safeguarding, talked about domestic violence, talked about protection of children, so a lot of these things are very emotive, and I've worked with the police and health services about what does it mean about over chastisement and emotional abuse, and what is that? Do you know what I mean? And what's the context around that? And what is parenting? And what does that mean? And there's lots of cultural things there. There's lots of cultural contexts that are difficult to understand if you've not experienced them. So it's really important to hear people's lived experience and what they're going through, and the context of behaviour, and what is safety and what isn't. And that's not to decry anyone's experience or the law, because that's there for a reason. That it's sort of like, in what context are all those things happening. So thank you so much for sharing.
Okay. And as you were sharing, we had a conference, the Girls Like Me, every year we do a conference in October to celebrate the International Day of the Girl. And this year we had a large pool from the Caribbean actually attending, because it was virtual. And what was really interesting was when I not only I share, we have a range of speakers all come and share their various stories. And one of the comments from a lady was, in the Caribbean, talking about like the cultural, for parents to beat their children, like, severely beat them, it's not like a big deal. They won't see it necessarily as wrong to make those kind of statements. The things that you just think, how could a mum say that to a child if you're in the UK? But as you say, over there, actually, you know what? It comes out, it's said, and it's not considered to be a big deal necessarily. It's not considered to be emotional abuse. And that can be so difficult when you are in the UK, because if that's what your parents are used to, that's what they've grown up and that's what they're acclimatized to. But in our society, the norm is not for that to occur. It can be a really difficult road to walk, because you're feeling the devastation from that. And I don't think it's any different for a child in the Caribbean. I think they feel the devastation, but it's normalized, unfortunately. And I do think you see in societies the ramifications where these things are normal. It plays out in different ways. But just as you were talking there, just triggered me of that. Yeah, you know what it is? It's very subjective, very subjective.
Totally subjective, and around who has the control around that, who has the power to make a difference to it. And there's lots of things around the power between men and women, the power between statutory services, and we could talk for ages about that. Maybe we will one day. We will one day. But I wanted to talk about your business and because I correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm feeling that your experiences in your childhood and in your adulthood have sort of like inspired you to start your business and to help people who may have had the same experiences as you growing up. And so tell me about your business.
So the Like Me CIC, it started in 2018. I had started another business, and I was had a main client that I was working with, and that suddenly ended. And so I was pregnant, and I was like, oh my goodness, I've just stopped that business, because I was like, no, something's not right, and I just don't have the energy for it. And here I am now with nothing. I had my daughter, attended an event called the Women Like Me, expected it to be a half empty event because it was free, went along and it was full of women in Luton, and the speakers just inspired. And at the end of the day, there's a call to action. Who's going to do this next year? And I just wanted to put my hands and my feet in the air, because I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to inspire women. And it was women sharing their personal personal stories of what they have overcome, and just encouraging and empowering and inspiring other women to do the same. And I thought, yeah, this is me. And literally left there. I was, for the first time in my life, I was unemployed, as in signing on. Went back to the job centre, found out about this new enterprise allowance, like, right, that's what I'm going to do, and did that to start my business. And so we are a training provider, and we also do events. We have our 2 events each year, the Women Like Me and the Girls Like Me. And then we have our training programs all around personal leadership, employability, and well-being, because who you are is the foundation for everything in your life. You know, we talk about life and work, and I'm always a bit like, why do we say it like that? Because work is part of life. But anyway, sorry for the background noise. We've got a crazy 4-year-old in the background.
It's actually adorable. So listeners, so there's a 4-year-old little girl in the background living her best life, and with no consideration for that. Mum's doing the power interview about her business, and that is all good, because that's what we're all about.
She's the inspiration, so I will allow her. She's the inspiration for the girls like me, because I'd been told on countless occasions, why don't you want to work with girls, Jasmine? You know, you do great. And I was always like, no, I like people to respond. I find when I've worked with young people, you know, they want to call me Miss. I don't want to be called Miss. And also I like when we have discussions, and with young people, you've got to work so hard to get them to interact. So I was always deterred, but literally after having my daughter, I realized, you know, I'd had a tough childhood, but because I'm a geriatric mama, that meant I've had plenty of time to work on my stuff, so that I'm not going to hand the issues over that I grew up with to my daughter, because I've done the best that I can do to work through them. My mum had me very young, so she didn't have that luxury. And when I had her, what I realized was there are going to be other mums, irrespective of age, but, you know, obviously the younger you are, the less likely that you've had the chance to work through your stuff. So she's going to have friends who may have parents that have challenges, and unfortunately that plays out in the home life. And I just thought, I want to know that I've done my part to provide a space where they can find out something from somewhere that will encourage, inspire, motivate them. So they haven't got to spend the 20 years that I spent finding themselves, understanding what's a healthy boundary, and those things that, you know, people that come from a more balanced home, they know this stuff. It took me years to find out some real basics, because I just didn't have the luxury of growing up with that. And so that was what motivated me to start the Girls Like Me alongside the Women Like Me, and I called it the Like Me CIC. And so, yeah, we have our training. We do, as I said, our events online. Because of COVID, we've taken everything remotely, all to empower and to inspire, so that women and teen girls can stop hiding, and that they can develop the confidence to get their life back, and then show up authentically, speak confidently, and shine boldly, using whatever gifts, abilities, talents, and skills they have. And that's why we do the employability piece, because I believe that once you get that kind of personal leadership, you know who you are, that emanates, flows into the what you do. Because if we want to live a life that's one that we want to wake up in the morning, it's about doing something that you love. Now, it may not be something that others might see as meaningful, because you might love people and you work in a supermarket, but because you meet different people every day, you know, that still may be for that individual an outward, you know, manifestation, what allows them to shine boldly. And then, of course, well-being is the thread that underpins everything. Without that, what have you really got?
Absolutely. And I think I really like the employability piece. We both work with young people as interns in the Kickstart program in the UK. And it is about giving people work experience and confidence, and also talking to them about what do they want to do, and, you know, how can we make this experience a really good one, so that they can show up authentically about and do what they want to do. And I really like what you said about, you know, liking people, you know, how can you make that work in a supermarket? How can you make that into a transferable skill? You know, how can you demonstrate that and give examples about, you know, how that works for you? Like I had a conversation with my intern about you know, the stuff that she wanted to do, and it's sort of like, you know, so the conversation is like, so okay, so you like marketing, you like, you know, working with wellbeing, you know, but so how can we sort of do that so that we can demonstrate those skills, so that makes you employable? And also, I think, having interviewed a few young people recently, how do you actually in conversation say your skills, say what you've got to offer, give that powerful story about yourself and what skills you have, because that is an art. And, you know, I've interviewed older people yesterday, actually. And one of the things that I noticed is that talking about yourself and giving of your story and your motivation is a skill that you have to practice.
Definitely.
And, you know, you could be the most technically proficient person in the world, but if you can't actually express that, you know, you're at a disadvantage, because people might sort of think, oh well, yeah, the CV is great, so they're going to be good. But if you can't articulate that, that they haven't got the evidence of doing that, especially with examples of that actually what does that mean?
And I think that this is something that people often miss, because people are encouraged, you know, work on your competence, you know, get really good at this thing, but miss the self-confidence piece. And I really think that when I do write my book, that's going to be one of my two things. And I think especially for us women, you know, working on our confidence does not feed into self-confidence, you know, and being able to say, I am good at this and I've done that and whatever, that comes from the confidence, self-confidence piece, you know. And like you said, practice, but you've got to believe in yourself, because if I believe in myself, then I'm going to be much better at sharing what I can do, you know, without you needing to try and drag it out of me, because I understand that's my job. I need to do that. That's what the interview is all about. You know, that's what the CV, the cover letter's for. But if you haven't got the self-confidence, that is such a difficult thing to do, and then it's such an uncomfortable thing to do, because you're hoping that your skill will speak for itself, and it can do. But you know, when people are interviewing, they're wanting to hear from you, they're wanting to connect with you. So you've got to allow you to come forth and shine. You really have.
And it can make the difference in getting the job or not getting the job. I was saying I was interviewing yesterday, and the person who got the job said something unprompted by me that I thought, oh yeah, okay, you know, they're a bright cookie. So you know, and that's very interesting, and that is a skill that can be taught. It's she did it instinctively, but that is a skill that can be taught, because although it can speak for itself, if you've got other disadvantages, and unfortunately being a woman is one of them, you know, it might not speak for itself, because men are better at talking about themselves and their achievements than women are, you know, across
definitely
the board.
So definitely so we just got to work on that, hone that, and then just keep challenging ourselves to get better and realize there's nothing wrong in it. And I think so it's the belief systems that we have, because I think as Brits especially, we feel that to talk about yourself and your skills, it's like braggadocious, isn't it? Oh, it's being big-headed. And it's like, no, if you're not going to say it, who else is going to say it? You know, in an interview, the interview doesn't know you.
Yeah, they haven't met you, so you have to tell them. You have to tell them or demonstrate everything, really. So we talked about, you know, part of your company's around well-being, and you know, and I actually think employability and well-being are so tied together, and a lot of the metrics around mental health are about employability, so they're totally entwined. But how do you manage your own well-being and your productivity and your focus? You know, I ask all my guests this, you know, how do you manage yourself?
Well, if you can recall, sometimes not too well, because the last time we were due to do this, I had a migraine, and you were like, Jasmine, should we even really be having a conversation? I was like, oh, well, you know, I am someone, and I do think, again, this comes back to like owning your story and recognizing impacts of things. I've had to learn over the years to be kind to myself. I am a huge taskmaster, and I can really crack that whip and be relentless because one, I'm very driven and very determined, and that means I can overcome challenges that otherwise maybe I wouldn't overcome. But there's always about seeking that balance. And what I have realized is, yes, it's good to be driven, it's good to be determined, but you've got to find that balance. And now the question that I ask myself is, how can I make my life easier? Because I find if I don't ask myself that question, oh my God, I'm so good at making it really hard. I'm so good at pushing myself too far, and expecting just far too much of myself. The challenge as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, is there's things that just need to get done. And it's like, it needs to get done. And if I'm the person that needs to do it, it's like, oh, Jazz, I know you want to rest, but the deadline is now. It's like, even, I've managed to achieve some great things this year, but it came at the expense of me just going, my daughter's not well, I'm not well, but there's a deadline. I've got to get this done. So I'm going to have to rest afterwards, and so I do, when I talk about balance, we have this idea of this is balance, equilibrium, but the reality is, I think actually balance, not just for entrepreneurs, I think balance in life is often about more pendulum. You swing a bit far to the right and you overdo it, but then you recognize that, and it's about making sure that you are self-aware to say, okay, no, Jazz, you need to swing it back. And actually, it's not about coming to the middle, it's about swinging a little bit more to the left on this occasion to compensate for the fact that you've overdone it there. Give yourself some time off. All right, I've been going, hammer to toe for the last week. I need to take some days off. Give myself a chance to just recuperate and say no to a few more things and allow the balance to come into place that way. And planning, these are things that, if you are really gifted at planning, for me, great long-term planner, short-term, medium term, I'm like, what is that? Like, seriously. So that's where I get a little stuck. And so I'm always like to my team, I'm like, okay, guys, this is my natural weakness. Work with me on this. I need you to help me, hold me accountable, remind me of things way in advance, and keep asking me, have you started this? Have you done it? Because my tendency is, oh yeah, I want to do that by then. And then next thing I know, it's here. Oh no. So, it's those kinds of strategies that I teach and I seek to demonstrate in my life. But then sometimes it's just like, I recognize this season that I'm in, it's a busy season. I have a 4-year-old, I am a wife. So, and my business is still a young business, so it's growing. It's going to be challenging. And so that's going to mean that I'm a family person. I like to meet with my family and socialize. And I want to do that. But then there's going to be times I'm just like, do you know what? I'm tired. And that's it.
I was silent during all of that.
I know.
I was.
Your face was saying a lot, though.
Because it is that. So one of the premises of this podcast YouTube channel is that entrepreneurs are naturally driven, that they will push themselves, that they will sort of like they this is my busy season, so I've got to do it now. I'm the person who knows what's doing, so I need to do it. I really like what you said about team and recognizing what your strengths and weaknesses are, because it is a strength. It is a wonderful thing to do, to be sort of enterprising, literally, and to have ideas and to push those ideas to fruition and make something of it, create something of it. However, you do need support,
definitely,
from your family and your friends, so that you and your team, so that people can sort of like say, oh, have you pushed yourself too far? Because the outcome could be burnout. It could be you literally can't get out of bed. Might be more liable to the terrible viral illness that's going around at the moment, which we both have experience of, and
mental health issues as well.
Exactly.
How can we be our best? How can we be confident? How can we shine if we're struggling because we're pushing, like I said, the burnout, we're pushing ourselves to that point where it's just too much. So it's really important, I think.
So I think naturally, and I know this for myself, which is why I was silent, that naturally, I will push myself to the nth degree, but it's the awareness and the sort of the mitigating factors that you put in place. I'm not saying that I've put them in place totally, but I have increased my team definitely, and to look at the strengths of your team and what they're actually there to do around to help you not to be in that place. And
I think some good boundaries really helps as well. So like for me, weekends, I'm just like, weekends I'm off. Like weekdays I might push myself. It would have to be something extremely important and pressing that I'm going to be working on the weekend. So I know then I can just relax and enjoy my family. So you have to have some kind of boundaries in place to protect yourself and safeguard yourself. Otherwise, yes, I think we're in a danger zone as entrepreneurs, just wanting to take on the world. And particularly when you feel like, you're doing something that's so worthy, it can be to your detriment, because you're like, I've just got to do this. I want to make a difference in the world. And so that, really great, noble aim can actually mean that you're sick. And one of the things that I have observed is, as I said, I'm a trainer, but I've delivered in various different places and to lots of women who, when I listen to their backstories, and they now have the fibromyalgia or other conditions very similar to that, what I'm often hearing are these are women who, when they were younger, were merciless with themselves, and they pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed themselves. And I'm like, do you know what? The body's going to scream and we need to listen. And so that's where I'm like, I really have made that effort to manage myself, because it's not just the mental health piece, it's the physical well-being that that's part of our well-being, your health, your wealth, your happiness. And once you lose that health piece, you lose a lot. And the business, unfortunately, it's not going to do something for you unless it's making you loads of money to try and buy your health back. And even then, how much of it can you get? So it's so important, I think, to really manage yourselves well, because I think there's a high price for us women, I've noticed, to pay. I don't hear of many men suffering with fibromyalgia and other similar kind of conditions, but women, I've heard of a lot of them, and they've typically all been women that have just pushed themselves way too far, too much when they were younger, and they had the energy, but they didn't find that balance.
Yeah, definitely. I think what you're talking about, I suppose, are the risks of when you're a heart-centered entrepreneur, a mission-led entrepreneur. And I actually think that goes back to a bit of our upbringing, a lot of the religion, and the sort of like, a lot of guilt and sort of and being good enough as well. And one of the and definitely the physical and mental well-being is totally intertwined. And you, as you said, if you look at people's backstory, how did we get to this? How did we get to this point, and what's the root cause of what things that are manifesting now, what's behind that? Is something that we look at in traditional medicine all the time. I wanted to sort of ask you, is there also a thing about what's good enough? Because sort of like in sort of what you were saying, and I recognize this in myself, there is this thing that what is success? When can I stop? When is it okay? And I hear from you, and I know from me, we've had massive successes. How many people have their own business? As a percentage of the population, or even as a percentage of women. And and even, and I say this to my children, even if everything stopped tomorrow, what you've done is a massive success. You've been successful in what you're doing. So I think, I suppose I wanted to hear your view on that. Do we expect too much of ourselves and not recognize our achievements so far?
I think that's a really good question. And I do think, yes, I think as women, I do think we're, generally speaking, quite hard on ourselves. And I think when you're an entrepreneur and whatever, the sky is your limit. The reason that you're an entrepreneur is because you believe that the seemingly impossible is possible. And so you're aiming for something that's so big. I think it's very hard to just say, okay, that's fine. Which, like, but I want to get there. Like, I want to achieve that thing. And you've got this massive mountain that you want to climb, your own Everest, whatever that Everest is to the individual. And so it's hard to say, okay, I've achieved enough for now. I can just take a little breather, and then, you know, tomorrow, next week, and then I can climb a little bit more. It's just that kind of, while I have life and breath, I'm just going to go for it. And to give you an example, it's a really funny story. I used to work as a music licensing company. That's where I started my training career, actually. What happened one day was we went rounders. We got on really well as a team, and this is an example of how determined I am. And so we were playing rounders. I hit a great ball, and so I went to run to the first base. Got there, the ball's still going. I'm like, this is a good ball. Let me go to second base. The minute I left first base, caught the ball and was throwing it to second base. And I saw my colleague standing in front of the base, and I just thought, I'm just going to run, because you never know. I might make it before the ball. Maybe something's going to go wrong. My colleague was in my way, and she didn't move, to her own detriment, because I mothered the woman, because I was just like, I am going to get to second base, come hell or high water. And that was just to give you an example of, it's just that determination of, this is what I'm going for, and I'm going all out, and I'm just not going to stop until I know I have to stop. And I think that's the inclination that we have. And so it's so hard to just say, okay, that's enough now. But I think we've definitely got to get better at managing ourselves. And when it comes to success, I think it's about breaking it down into smaller chunks. And that's, I think, the challenge. You know, my history teacher said to me, Jasmine, how do you eat an elephant? And I was like, you know, one bite at a time. So there is that bigger success. But I think if we can just learn to break it down into steps, that will support us to not push ourselves to burn out or get too close to it, because we shouldn't even be trying to get near there. You know, it should be that kind of, all right, I might be pushing it a little bit much here, but I come back quickly enough so that I'm not, you know, constantly yo-yoing where I have to get sick and run down before I then will take care of myself. But you look at people that achieve the greatest things in life, and they say to you, they don't feel like they're working because they love what they do. And so it's just this challenge, you know, of, if you're passionate, you love it, it doesn't feel like, like some people talk about work, and therefore you just have that inclination to go. So we've got to define success for ourselves, you know.
That's absolutely wonderful. So we've talked a little bit around, are there any books that inspire you to, you know, do what you do?
So books that inspire me are, I love history. My major love is history, and I love my history as a Caribbean person, but the African American story is told a lot more than the African Caribbean story. And so books like The Help, absolute favorite of mine, and I really enjoy the movie, and I love the book. And what I love about those stories is the fact that you have people that have been so oppressed, and they persist, and they achieve dreams, they achieve things that, you know, for some it was just a generation before them, it would have been impossible, you know. And I think the reason why I love those stories is because it does fuel that fire to say, if these individuals who have experienced in their lifetime things I cannot imagine, and they've gone on to achieve things, what's my excuse? I don't have one. Like, I've got to make this life count. And so those are the stories that I love to read. And that's one of my all-time favorites. Another one is Sister of Mine, quite similar kind of story of African American story.
Lovely. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And we'll put links to those in the show notes if people want to check those books out, which are fantastic books, by the way. How can people get hold of you? Is there any events or anything that you're doing that you want to share with us?
So people can get hold of me by going to the company's website, which is www.thelikemecic.org.uk. And what we will have coming up is we've got some of our training programs coming up in January and February, honing me all around, you know, helping women to refine and to hone themselves and all the necessary so that they can just shine boldly. And we've also got I'm really excited. We're going to be doing our AAA. We're calling it Goal Forward with Affirmations. It encompasses our AAA because affirmations, action, and accountability. These are the 3 A's that run through our business. And I was even just reflecting yesterday and thinking, gosh, I was saying my affirmation that I'm an award winner, which I can now say, woo, woo, I am an award winner. So affirmations are so powerful. So we're going to have a program next year, for women to join, to come on board so that they can make sure that their goals and their dreams are coming true as well. So yeah, that's what we're doing. We will have our events next year too that women can plug into, but that's going to be kind of our kickoff for 2022.
Those details will be on your website, but I'll also put them in the show notes, so Jasmine will provide information around that. So Jasmine, it's been absolutely wonderful to speak to you today.
It's been great.
And it's been really, really good. And I hope we have another conversation soon because there's so much to what you do and the background around it and what you want to do to help people. Do you have some final words of advice to share your experience so people can take away today?
My final words are going to be, remember to show up authentically. You are you and nobody else can do you like you. So why not just be the best you that you can be? Speak confidently, by owning your story because it's yours. Michelle Obama says, your story is yours. It's all you have. So own it, speak confidently, and then shine boldly because that's what you were born to do. Marianne Williamson says it, who are we not to shine? That's what God created us to do. And so those would be my points that I would want to encourage each and everyone listening to remember. And just don't give up. Don't give up. Whatever it be that it is that you really want here, don't give up, not on yourself and not on your dreams, not on your goals, because you can do it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jasmine. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. That is it for the Dawn Jarvis show today. Take care and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, Dawn. Bye-bye.